Hey, Chris. How's it going?
Hey, Jason. How are you?
Doing good today?
Yeah. How about you?
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
It's a Monday where we're at, but
Yeah, it is. It's a rainy Monday.
It is a rainy Monday.
Yeah.
So
I feel bad because my family lives out in the Southwest in New Mexico, and West Texas, Arizona, where all the wildfires are raging.
oh wow.
You know, it's just so stinking dry out there.
Yeah.
And
Has
then
your
here,
family been affected by any of it?
not directly.
Okay.
No, we've there was one of the wildfires a number of weeks ago, I guess a month or two ago, was really close to one of the places where Donna and I lived.
Okay.
Early on in our marriage, our first couple of years of marriage, down in Central Texas, and so that was. And since we left there, they had a really bad wildfire that I think it took out like 25% of the town.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, a small town, not like
Right.
not like Indianapolis, kind of.
Right, no.
You know, but you know, town of 1,000 people. That's still 250 people affected.
Right.
You know, I mean, it was huge. It was devastating, and so that really hits home a lot. And then
Right.
you know, it's not raining outside here, and I can step on my grass, and water still like oozes up because the ground's like a sponge.
Welcome
And
to Indiana weather,
like,
right?
Oh God, I've never seen so many earthworms out on my driveway. And I'm like, what are they thinking?
Right.
And you know, I didn't realize that. Oh, they can actually drown underground.
Right.
When there's so much groundwater, they can drown. I'm like, man,
Yeah, who would have known?
earthworms in New Mexico, they're 20 feet deep. You know, that's the only place they can find moisture.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a little different mindset living out here than I, have had living in the Southwest. So,
So what are we touching on today, Jason?
well, we're going to continue down the road of the leader mindset.
Okay.
Of, what are the things that, that we need to think through as a leader to help us, better take care of the people underneath us, so that we're a leader that's worth following, not just a leader that somebody has to follow.
Right.
And if we're, what we're going to talk about today is making sure we have clear expectations. Mm-hmm. That we've talked about support and challenge. That challenge aspect is about setting clear expectations. Mm-hmm. So that we can be too challenging, I guess.
Yes.
That's,
I agree.
and when we set expectations that are maybe unrealistic, of, hey, I need you to, I know this is a 10-day job. I need you to get it done in 7.
Right.
Man, it's unrealistic in that, I could not sleep for a couple nights.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Pull a couple all-nighters. I'm going to have to work the weekend, but I can get it done in the 7 days.
Right.
That's a little unrealistic,
Right.
Because people have lives,
Right.
Or does it go to the impossible level of that 10-day job? It's got to be done tomorrow.
Right.
It's just not going to get done. There is no
There's no
humanly, earthly way for that to happen.
Unless you gave me 10 people to help me do it. And even then, I'm not sure that you can bring them all on, task fast enough.
Right.
to
Can you get it fast enough? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so we can bring challenge that is too much, that it's over, it's unrealistic, it's impossible, things that it really just creates a dominating culture.
Right.
If we do that too often. I mean, granted, there's some industries, there's some businesses that an outside force comes up and you got to have something tomorrow, and
Right.
you may not be able to get it done to an A+ level, but you kind of, somebody else demanded it and you have no choice.
Right.
But you have control within your organization of when you set deadlines, of what profit margins, I want a 50% profit margin on this,
Right.
It may be unrealistic or impossible. Mm-hmm. And so setting those expectations appropriately truly matters for your team.
Right.
That if you constantly come to the table with unrealistic or impossible type of expectations, it can really create a very dominating culture. Mm-hmm. And dominating cultures lead to burnout.
Right.
They lead to apathy.
Mm-hmm.
They lead to resistance and to turnover.
Right.
I mean, why would somebody want to sit in that role if they're constantly being asked to give more than it's humanly possible to give?
Right.
Well,
and I mean, take it to another level. Take it to customers as well. Like, I think that some of your customers sometimes have unrealistic expectations. And I mean, so as you're serving them, if you don't set those appropriately, you can create your own burnout.
Exactly.
For your people that are working with you and the people that you're working for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so it's expectations are huge.
Yeah. So the other side of the coin, though, is to not be unrealistic or impossible, but to be limited in your expectations of not expecting enough. Of, this employee could probably pull off 3 or 4 good projects this month, but we're only going to expect 1 or 2.
Oh yeah.
And so it's limited. It's too easy. Or you take that a step further and you just become resigned and just kind of like, whatever.
Right.
I don't really have any expectation. Just get done what you feel like you need to get done, and we'll move on in the day.
Right.
Everybody gets a paycheck, and we move on in life. That challenge, on one side of the expectation scale can be dominating, right?
Right.
The other side can just be apathetic. It can be, it kind of creates this protective culture where, hey, what you get done is what you get done. And, at the end of the day, we're good. We're just kind of protecting each other's feelings, or even you can even set low expectations in terms of even trying to protect a job or protect a culture. But by going too low on those expectations, you're actually not protecting, you're harming. Because that protective culture leads to underperformance. Well, I could do 3 or 4 projects this month.
Right.
I'm just going to take care of the 1 or 2.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about that. It's not expected of me. Or, it leads to a sense of entitlement. I don't have to do much to get what I'm getting out of this job.
Right.
It's more about what I'm getting, not what I can give. And it creates this unhealthy culture around your workplace, around your team, around your business. It just, so having a clear expectation, something that's realistic, that's not, it's on par with what the business can do. It's on par with what the individual can do, what your team can do. And being clear about that, of saying, okay, you completed 3 projects this month.
Right.
Do you think you've got a 4th in you? What do you want to shoot for next month? Is 3 the right spot, or do we want to shoot for 4?
Right.
And having those open conversations and communicating well, because expectations really don't matter if they're not communicated clearly.
Right.
We only have to look into our personal lives for that, right?
Right.
I mean, how many times have we walked into, our marriages, our close relationships, our friendships, or kids or anything like that, and we've not been clear about what we expect.
Right.
And when we're not clear, when we don't communicate it, and it doesn't get done right, because, well, it wasn't clear.
Right.
We're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, aren't we?
Totally. Well, and I was just thinking about this. My wife and I just had this conversation. We had a conversation, and I wasn't clear on the expectations. So it created confusion.
Right.
And I was like, hey, I need to know what we're doing here.
Right. And so when it's not communicated well,
Right.
like you said, it creates confusion.
Right.
And then that leads to what? Frustration.
Yeah,
and then
I was
bitterness
frustrated.
And anger.
Yes.
And so one of the greatest quotes.
Are we talking to me today?
I know. It's, the self-aware leader is like looking in a mirror at ourselves.
Right.
That's where that's what I keep learning, and that's painful. That one of my favorite quotes out of some of these giant tools, the giant worldwide tools that we use, is that uncommunicated expectations is simply premeditated bitterness.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
when we choose not to communicate well, we're just saying, I would feel better about just being bitter when it's not met.
Right.
And then so that's where we have to take in like the 5 voices, how we communicate,
Right.
how we, what our expectations are from our own selves, and how that,
Right.
if you're a pioneer trying to communicate with a nurturer, you need to think about how does a
address
nurturer
that?
perceive this?
Right.
How do I communicate clearly about this?
Because there's 2 sides of every communication,
Yeah.
equation. Like there's
Right.
the receiver and the delivery.
Right.
The deliverer. And
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, as we think through, not just what is my expectation about that, we need to do some deep searching on that sometimes, of especially if there's an expectation that keeps falling short, that you're not, my team never meets this expectation.
Yeah.
Do the hard work. Is this realistic?
Yeah.
Have I journeyed to the far end of the scale that I'm being unrealistic or I'm impossible? Or have I journeyed the other way that, I've only communicated a limited expectation,
Right.
but my true expectation is a little bit higher, and we're never meeting the higher one because they're only shooting for the lower,
Right.
and they don't know that there's a higher expectation.
Right.
So we need to do the hard work as leaders to
Totally.
be self-aware, to look inside ourselves. What have I truly communicated? And being brave enough to ask somebody, pull somebody on your team
Right.
and say, hey, what's it like being on the other side of me?
Right.
Do you feel like,
Are you hearing these things?
right,
Or how are you hearing these
right.
things?
What do you feel is the expectation in our company, or, around this issue, around this goal or something like that? Ask them to, give them the freedom to speak honestly. And, you might pick out a pioneer or a connector,
Right.
or a guardian.
Right.
Those voices would do a lot better in giving feedback. So be brave.
Right.
Do the hard work.
It is hard work,
It is.
but
It
it's
is.
also good work.
Yeah, and it's the work that is easy to get relegated to the back burner.
Totally. Totally.
The end of the month comes, the expectation isn't met, and you're like, I got to address that this month. But then the next day you have more pressing issues, more urgent issues.
Right.
And then the end of that month comes, you're like, oh, good grief, we've missed it again. Take time.
Somebody once told me that the culture of a business is a full-time job.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Like it is. So while you're trying to run the rest of the business, trying to balance out that culture is a lot of work.
Right. And the culture
A
of your
healthy culture.
business will devour a good strategy any day.
Yeah.
If your culture goes unhealthy, your strategy is going to be unhealthy,
Yeah.
even if it's the best strategy in the world. And so, all right, communication,
Communication.
expectation.
Right.
Yeah.
Go-
At least this wasn't a painful topic today.
No, right. I think I got some work to do.
Yeah, but we all do.
Right.
We all do.
And,
So,
and well, let's to that point, right? It is somewhat of a growing process, is it not?
absolutely.
I mean, so
Absolutely.
you're not going to hit this right out of the gate. Too.
Right.
So even if you are maybe behind the 8 ball or struggling with something, don't give up.
Right.
Just don't stop.
Right.
Right. Because I mean, that's what I'm hearing is like, and I probably, because I know I've done everything that you just said, like pushed it to the back burner because I had something more pressing come up. I know I do that.
Yeah.
But I also know that the culture is very important to me. So I need to keep pushing it forward.
Absolutely. Because no one is really uniquely designed to sit perfect on that expectation scale of
Right.
I present realistic expectation every time.
Right.
We're going to hit it. A blind squirrel still finds a nut every once in a while, right?
Right.
But we are going to tend to one side or the other, either too dominating, unrealistic, and impossible, or we're going to be too protecting and more limited and resigned in our expectations. And so we've got to learn how to come to the middle ground, because that realistic expectation creates liberty. It creates freedom, that when somebody is feeling like they are fulfilling their potential and they have enough challenge to keep them on the edge of their seats, and the reward is great on the other end of I completed this task, I completed this project, this job, I met this goal.
Right.
When all of those things work together, your capacity as a team grows.
Right.
It really does. And so don't feel bad if you're sitting out there going, yeah, but I mess up so many times. Well, we all do.
We all do.
Because
Right.
none of us are uniquely designed to sit perfectly in the
And a
middle.
lot of people don't communicate the same either. So it's a part of that process too.
Absolutely.
There's several variables in there.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm giving anybody excuses, but I also just recognize it for what it is and keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A little bit better the next time is better than where you're at today.
Amen.
And short baby steps, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
So, hey, so what are we doing today? We're taking another deep dive, right?
We are. We're going to throw things off again a little bit today, and we don't have a guest, but we're going to talk about some more business topics.
Right.
Today we're going to talk about some mindset stuff. So let's go ahead and jump to that because I want to get talking about that.
All right. Sounds good. All right. See you in a minute. All right, Chris, you ready to do this?
I am.
All right, we're going to take another week where we do a little bit of a deep dive into a topic related to entrepreneurism and starting up your own business, right?
Right.
Last week we touched on like finding your fit, right?
Right.
Of
so what business might be best for you?
Right. And this week we're going to jump into finances, right?
Correct.
Okay, because that's a huge part of
Right.
starting a business.
And there's multiple facets in that. But
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to diving into that a little deeper but from the bigger perspective, it's pretty much about money and how you deal with money.
Right. Okay, so give us a quick overview. Where are we going to go over these next few minutes as we dive a little deeper?
Okay, let's touch on personal finance. Let's think about that. And then the thought process.
That sounds a little more painful.
And it is. It truly is. Like, I think it's a real thing. And then let's touch about the business finances and the thought process around that, because unfortunately or fortunately, they tie together.
Yeah.
So that money is a one of those things that you just have to talk about, and you have to recognize that everybody has some connection to money, whether good or bad.
Okay.
And it's not all bad.
Yeah.
Some of it's good. But you have to recognize it for what it is. And you have to do that. I think it's best to do that before you start in a business.
That's probably wise.
Yeah. So
When you're running out of money, it's too late.
right. And it never feels good to be in that perspective.
Right. Okay.
So,
All right. So I think you said the first step is thinking about personal finances.
It totally
Where
is.
do we go there?
So I would say that, if you've gone to the point of you've recognized that you are interested in starting this business, I would look at your personal finance as a business in that process of recognizing it. Use your personal money as an opportunity to recognize it for what it is. I mean, I know that there's several finance people out there that'll tell you, hey, if your business is $100,000 business or whatever your income is, would you pay you to manage it? And oftentimes there's a lot of people that it's kind of a gut check. Hey, you're managing $100,000 in asset every year. Are you doing a good job of managing it?
Right.
And
right.
so these are real conversations about what you need to be thinking about. With what I thought about when we first started too, is that at some level I needed to manage this money wisely so that I had, which we're going to, I think that one of the things that you need to think about is having reserves or
Right.
having some seed money. And if you haven't got your personal reserves figured out, trying to bring on another expectation or another business that's going to suck some money out of you
Right.
in the process of growth is kind of is going to really probably wear on people a lot heavier than they think. And I think that's the part that I really want to get across, in the fact that it is not something simple. For one, it's never easy to take on and start a new business, right? But if you don't have the proper, adequate starting points, it even makes it 10 times harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not going to break down, hey, you need to do this, this, and this with your finances.
Right.
But I will say that having a reserve, a 6-month reserve or a 12-month reserve, depending on the person, is crucial.
Right.
And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, when my wife and I were, and I was entertaining starting businesses, and we've been going through a financial process, we needed a reserve that she and I were comfortable with.
Yeah.
And it started with a reserve for our household. And then there was several opportunities that I missed out on early on as I figured out what I wanted to do. There was some housing that I wanted to purchase, but I wasn't able to because my finances weren't ready.
Right.
And I kicked myself for a long time for it.
Yeah.
But then what I realized later on was, had I jumped on those, it would have created a different problem.
Right.
Versus waiting, making sure I was right in the right financial thought process and in the right financial place to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. Because an opportunity that you don't have the money for isn't always necessarily an opportunity.
Right. And a reserve is probably not your opportunity fund.
No, and it's not. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
That's a great thought process, because then I would say, so then we go shift it to, if you're going to go into there and recognize that there's behaviors that go along with that personal finance that you're going to be able to come about and learn real quick. And the crazy part is that doesn't just, that's not just because it's personal money. If you put your personal money in a business, in your eyes, it's still your personal money. It's not business money.
Right.
It's still somewhat personal money. So your tendencies is to treat it somewhat like your personal money. So if you don't have a good management on this money, managing your business, what you're going to shift over to be your business money is going to be a little harder.
Yeah.
And even if for those out there that are like, oh, I'll take a loan and I'll just knock it out that way. Well,
Right.
it doesn't matter whether you've borrowed for it or it's your personal money. Now, I would encourage you to use personal money because it's a lot easier to start out with knowing that you don't have negative equity, right? It's always harder to, okay, I got this payment every month and it's just this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's then that affects your reserves too, because then you have to plan knowing that you're going to have that.
Right.
So it's multifaceted, like it gets in deep, and maybe that's another time, but realistically, it's those behaviors, it's those opportunities, it's those things that watching yourself, how you react, how your spouse reacts. Because if you start a business and you don't have that money, or you borrow that money and all of a sudden things are going bad, you're going to feel double the whammy because things aren't going well and you're losing money left and right. So how do you come out of that? And sometimes I've been in this position before, where sometimes it's counterintuitive. You want to stop funding it, but in order to truly get it done and done right, you still have to fund it.
Right.
So that might mean that it's another $10,000. Well, if you're at zero, trying to go to negative $10,000 hurts on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So these are things that I want people to recognize as they're entertaining these ideas.
And taking that encouragement to make sure you have a reserve is easy to dismiss or easy to put on the back burner. And I know we're really tired of talking about it, but I think COVID made us face these things in our own personal finances, in our own businesses, where we realized that, man, this is fragile. And where is my reserve? What's happening? You know, business dried up. Maybe you were a business able to capitalize on COVID, but that's a smaller percentage probably, right? You know, and even your family finances is my job going to be here in a few months when I get back? You know, we don't know. And so we were forced with facing that reality of needing or having or making sure that we have that reserve. And as a business, we've got to take it as seriously as we did in that moment. And even as a family, you know, whether we're profit, nonprofit, family, we've got to be serious about looking at that. And I'm horrible at that.
Well, and truly, like a lot of people, even in today's world, they don't have the training in finances, and so it's not. And and oftentimes people say, well, nobody likes to talk about two or three things, and then finances is always one of those two or three things, right? So because money's that thing where it's like, don't tell me what to do, it's mine. I want to do with it what I want to, or it has another stigma that's connected to it. So, you know, at this point in my life, like if somebody's got a financial question, I'm ready to jump on it because I enjoy talking about that stuff, because there's also a lot of wisdom that comes with asking questions that are surrounded by money and finances.
So let's talk a little bit more about our mindset as we enter into, you know, not just our personal, but our business finances. What about our mindset needs to shift? How do we need to be thinking about our money?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, I was talking about how your personal finances are affected. You're going to affect your business finances. So then you walk into your business finances, and at some level, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum. There's kind of this scarcity mindset where I'm constantly trying to find work to try to fund what I'm doing as far as like growing the business, right? And then there's this abundance mindset where I have everything I need and I want to work. It's almost the opposite ends. And truly at the end of the day, at some level, everybody kind of goes through some of that, right? Because I know like there's a lot of businesses that they are seasonal. So they know that there's a time where they're not going to make as much money. Right. So, and then, I mean, the pandemic, like you said, it brought up another thought process like, hey, maybe we need to plan a little differently so that we don't have to, because I think that the scarcity mindset at one end, which is kind of the negative, it's got a negative connotation to it. But I think at that level, it can kill your business. It can be the thing, like, even though I'm not telling you, Jason, we have no money, I need you to do this job and I'll pay you at the end of the week as soon as we get paid for this job, right? Like that, even though it doesn't, you might not know that. I might not say that to you. At some level, what we don't know is that our body language and our conversations oftentimes lead us to that thought process without telling people we're there. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I think that if you're running from a constant a negative pull of, we've got this loan to pay for, we've got money that's going out the door flowing, and I've felt that pressure. I know what that looks like, and it doesn't feel good. And at some level, I think every business goes through it, right? But if you can recognize it for what it is and recognize that there is another side, the other side of that fence, or you're working through a part of the business where you know you're going to come out on the other side, and knowing that, with which is helpful with a coach, right? Hey, your projections are good. You're still going good. Keep it up. Well, that's a lot easier to think about when you're on the abundance side of things and you have money rolling in and you have money going out. It's a lot easier. So what I'm trying to say is, like, some seed money or money to start off with and using a coach to help you get there, to help you understand what you need to start with, depending on what your business is huge. Because I think it's not that you're trying to go out there and not do every job or be super picky about your jobs. Because when you start, you want to work. Right? You just go, you're just like, there's no jobs I probably won't take in the first year of business, right? Because you just need jobs. You need jobs to stay alive. But when you're working from, I don't have any money in the bank, or I'm in a negative because of a credit card bill that's coming up, how am I going to balance this out? Yeah. It's just a different mindset that I don't know that, I think you can learn something from both of them. But I think it's a lot easier from the work from the abundance mindset than it is from the scarcity mindset.
Yeah. Because when we're in that scarcity mindset, we're focused on what we don't have.
Right.
And when we focus on what we don't have, that convolutes and complicates all of our decisions.
Correct.
Whether that's staffing or supply or pricing on a job, or how do I deal with this client? You know, I don't like working with this client, but I want it. I have to, you know, but when we can flip our mindset to think about, you know, what we do have and, you know, and kind of get into a mindset of, you know, what do I truly need?
Right. What do I need?
Yeah.
What are my and that's a great, you know, going back to, in that mindset of the scarcity and abundance side of things is like, if your personal house needs money to operate, which it does, right? Yeah. Every house, every home if it needs money and your business needs money, you're really running negative. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So the scarcity side of it becomes almost double compounded, because your scarcity in your business and your scarcity for home just compounded things. And just the weight for a business owner, male or female, as a person trying to bring in an income for their family, just gets compounded. Yeah. And it's a lot of weight to carry. I'm not saying that people don't do it. I'm not saying people aren't successful in the midst of going through it. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is, if you can try to recognize that some of that's there and potentially there and be somewhat ready for it, man, I think that it's a lot easier to try to come through those woods, not with as many scars. And I don't know that those scars are necessary, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay. And I think when we, you know, I guess taking the mindset abundance too far, right? You know, when you start a business, that sometimes you know, as an entrepreneur, you think, oh man, by month 2, month 3, you know, we're going to be running all cylinders, and I'll be pulling the profit that I need to support my family.
Right. And I mean,
is that 100%?
I mean, for me personally, that was not my learning experience. I know I can speak for myself as far as when I first started one of my businesses. I did have some seed money. I did have some because I had about 6 months worth of reserves because because I was really nervous. I had the first time hiring somebody else outside of myself. So I had 6 months worth of reserves, and we had a ballpark plan, but I know for the first year I didn't pay myself, and the second year I don't think I paid myself that much either. So it's like I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that we had set it up so that my income wasn't knew that it wasn't going to be a factor for our household income, if that makes sense, for a while. So knowing that, we planned a little differently, and so now it's a little different in the fact that we can count on some more of my income now, but every business is different and every start is different. So
yeah,
and I mean, we talked about this at one point before, where it's like there's a statistic out there that says that businesses die. Entrepreneurs their businesses often die in the first 5 years. That it's just not something and I think that's one of those things is these are the kind of tools that I wish somebody would have told me.
Right.
So that I would have known that my statistic, I wouldn't have been part of that statistic so that I could have a better chance.
Right. So like you were saying earlier, having that coach, having a mentor who can help paint a realistic picture of the coming months ahead.
Right.
Of, you think you can pull this off in 3, you probably should plan for 6.
Right.
And you've got a 3-month reserve, you should probably plan for 9. Or,
right.
You're
or
not going to pull a full...
Or maybe 2 years.
Yeah, you're not going to pull a paycheck from your job for a year or 2 years.
Right.
Or, yeah.
So, and that's what I went and spoke recently to a group, and they were wanting to know some information on that. And I said, what you need to recognize is that you're working 40 hours a week, if not more. The first year I started my business, I was working way over 40 hours a week. And then on top of that, I wasn't getting paid. So I knew that for me personally, that was the sacrifice I was willing to give up to get my opportunity started. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I knew that was my opportunity cost on top of the fact that the financial side of things weren't going to be perfect, but I wanted to make sure I covered my expenses, if that makes sense. So there was a lot of learning through that process. And did I start it right? I don't know. It worked. I mean, it's worked out okay for me. I don't know that it's the best for everybody, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I see now people who are buying businesses and starting them out, and they're more successful than I am. So I'm not saying that.
Well, it kind of depends on what you're willing to risk.
Right.
Some people it's easier to risk or sacrifice, maybe a better word. Sacrifice, a larger nest egg or seed money.
Right.
Some are more willing to sacrifice time, effort, energy.
Right.
I went through a little boot camp thing. Of not promising, but saying you could expect like 40 grand growth over 4 weeks, 4 and 4, 40 and 4, something like that. I forget what it was called. And I went through that going, ooh, this is going to be cool.
Yeah. And
then I realized I'm not quite ready for that. And so it's taken me 4 months, not 4 weeks, to work through that because I didn't have more than, what's Dan Miller's, you work on it like 3 hours a week or 3 hours a day or anyone can start a business and...
Oh, he's the 48 hours to work you love.
Right, but he's got a principle where if you just devote 3 hours a week, and then you can change that into like 3 hours a day, 15 hours a week,
right,
that anybody can start a business.
Right.
But the sacrifice there is time.
Right.
It's going to be a slower launch versus somebody who can commit 40 to 60 hours a week every week.
Yeah.
That's going to be a quicker launch. And so you have to have your reserves set appropriately for those different.
I think he talks about that too, because it is totally one of those things where he is a huge proponent of, there's a lot of small businesses you can start just with a little bit of time and a push mower. I mean, like,
yeah,
you know
that's
what
true.
I mean?
That's true.
Like there's so many things out there that have the opportunity.
Yeah. And I apologize about that. We should probably double check our quotes like that.
Yeah.
I'm really good at quoting somebody 50%.
Right. Same here.
So where else do we need to think? Where else do we need to go in this conversation about money and finance?
I think what I have seen and over time is like it's easier for somebody once said this, and I can't remember who. Once again, like I don't know where exact quote, but money is attracted to money, which is interesting to think about because I think that when you're running in an abundance and things are going well, it's not that you don't think that much about it because it just flows, right? But the moment you're on the negative side of that and you're constantly focused on it, it's really hard to pull away from it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that
Right.
you, it's hard to attract that when you're trying to grab at it so hard. And
Right.
And that's that open hand, closed hand concept, I think, is as well when we're talking about money.
Right.
Is that, when it comes in and out of your hand, it flows pretty easily.
Yeah.
But the moment that you need it, you have to hold on to it. It just creates a different.
So does that tie into, I'm going to tie in what you said earlier with a conversation I heard on a podcast that a guy was talking about how he scaled his business down to grow it. In that he told some clients, some big corporate clients that he had, I think he was sending product to them, but they were high maintenance and they were hard to deal with.
Yep.
And he was like, I should only be devoting, say, 5 hours a week to working with this client. But some of these clients were taking upwards of 12, 15 hours a week.
Oh, wow.
And I was spending all this time and they were draining my energy. And so what I finally got to this line of, the scarcity mindset, like we were saying, if you're looking at what you don't have, you're going to make decisions that I've got to hold on to this client. Even though they're driving me nuts, it's worth it.
Right.
And he said, I flipped my mindset and said, if I get rid of this client and I tell them no, that I'm going to choose to lose income and margin and profit off of this client, that frees up that 12 hours a week. And now I suddenly have capacity for 2 good clients that only cost the 5 hours a week,
Right.
and a little bit left over
Right.
to invest in other ways. And he said, it hurt, but once I made that shift and I thought, you know what, I can be more profitable by saying no to this.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, I think that when you have, and it's not perfect, right? Out of the gate, you have a certain mindset, whether it's scarcity or abundance, and you're working through that process. And then you get to a certain point in your business and you're thinking about those kind of things a little differently. And it's once again, it's an abundance or a scarcity concern. But working through that and recognizing that maybe all your clients shouldn't be your clients. That was one thing that I, but that thing helps. You need to focus on how that all comes around and affects your bottom line. And so at some level, you have to be very strategic on thinking about that.
Yeah.
But time does become money at some level, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's yet another tool. I mean, money is a tool, right? Oftentimes you've heard people say, well, I could use a brick to break a window, or I can use a brick to build a house. Like, it's just, it's one of those things that you get to choose what you do with it. So, and that money is that tool.
Right.
But yeah, so I think that it's interesting that you said that. I think I've heard a similar story where somebody did that and then they told the customer that they weren't going to take care of them anymore. But then they came back and were like, no, don't get rid of us. We'll back off. And then they adjusted. The customer adjusted so that they could receive the product still. And then they took care of more of the stuff where they were trying to push it more on the business owner.
Right.
So
they recognize their negativity in the relationship.
Yeah,
and
they recognized that they weren't willing to give up the productivity that they were getting from the situation, which, and once again, like, it could go either way.
Yeah.
Right. It could go to the point where you do lose the client, and what if it's 50% of your income for the year? And that's huge.
Right.
Huge. You know what I mean?
So I think this kind of comes down to, as a startup business, as an entrepreneur, are you willing to make the hard decision?
Right.
Of, I really need 6 months of reserves, but I want to launch tomorrow, and I've only got 3 months.
Right.
And so I can't follow my dream. I can't launch tomorrow because I've got to wait. I've got to be patient. That's a hard decision.
It is. And
how many other issues through this of, here's a great opportunity, but I don't have money in that opportunity fund.
Right.
Well, I've got reserve fund.
Right.
Don't touch it. Making those hard decisions.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Implementation. I mean, both of those run hand in hand. Like, I see so many people start up new businesses, and it's like, they didn't sacrifice right out of the gate. For the construction world, it's going out and buy a brand new truck. Like, I need a brand new truck for blah, 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 blah. Well, it's a look, and I get that you want to present yourself well. I have no beef with that.
Right.
What I have a beef with is, for me personally, is I can't afford a $100,000 truck.
Right.
Right. I mean, as
Right.
much as I would love to have one, I know that internally I go, hey, Chris, you need to sacrifice. Like, it's not a sacrifice because I have a truck, but it's a sacrifice in the fact that I don't need a brand new truck. You know what I mean?
Right.
And at some point, maybe I will buy a brand new truck, but I've come along the way that I've realized that you can use that money to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And a lot of different ways. So it's implementation. It's that thought process. These are the kind of things that I would hope that what we're doing with this podcast is giving people opportunity to sit back and question. Like, do you have to have a brand new truck? Do you have to have a fancy tool that you need to start this business? Or can you find something on Craigslist that's going to get you through for a minute? And you're going to now, mind you, like, we have to be very conscious about the fact that the quality of work, I always strive for the top quality of work, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm looking for that. I don't think my truck, whether it's a brand new $100,000 F-250 or a $20,000 F-250 that's older, driving down the road with a trailer on the back of it's not going to affect my work.
Right.
Right. And some people will go, well, what about reliability?
Right.
Well, okay, so you build in some margin there to help balance out the $20,000 truck versus the $100,000, because there's $80,000 in between there that can be budgeted some way, right? Even if you were going to spend the $100,000 on a truck, because no vehicle is perfect,
right?
So all this implementation, all of this recognizing, hey, what's your thought process? What do you think you need? What do you really need? Going back to our conversation, about.
And if you have the bandwidth to venture down these things, sometimes it's just a tool or a product, but like during COVID again, because we're tired of talking about it, right?
Right.
We watched restaurants add in the ability to do app orders and curbside delivery or Grubhub and some of those things were carried out better than others in different places.
Yep.
And I know for myself as a creative voice in a nonprofit organization, and I always think of, this would be amazing. This would help push our vision, our mission further. And I've launched tools or resources of, we should do such and such. And then a month later realize, we don't have the bandwidth to keep this going.
To keep it going. Yeah.
And so, in those early startup days to look at things, just another church example.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with Saddleback Church out in
I've heard of it.
California. Rick Warren, Purpose Driven Life.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, they've had a phenomenal ministry. When he planted the church, from day one, he said, we will not have a youth ministry until we reach 500 people. And that is not a strategy in the church world.
Right.
You gotta have your kid men. You've got to have your youth ministry because you want to reach families.
Right.
And he was like, we don't have the critical mass until we reach 500 to support and truly invest in a youth ministry the way we need to.
Wow.
And so they did not do it.
Wow.
When everybody else is doing it from day one. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
And so making decisions like that in our businesses and our, looking at our vision saying, I really want to do this, but when I do it, I want to do it well.
Right.
And I want to make sure I have the bandwidth. I want to make sure I have the finances. I want to make sure I have the resources.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't know that, and truly at the end of the day, like, I don't know that every business owner has to be completely out of the box. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that there's plenty of other people that have done things well. You don't feel like you have to recreate the wheel in the process of the finances.
Right.
Because truly, at the end of the day, it's a nuts and bolts process. I mean, I truly think as much as I wanted it to be my problem and my personal, like, you can't speak to this. In finances, if you talk to somebody who's in finance, it is totally nuts and bolts. Like, at the end of the day, A plus B equals C. And I mean, it's
somebody's walked that road.
Right. Somebody's walked that road. And even though your business might look different from other people's, the nuts and bolts of the finances are often very similar.
Right. Don't let yourself feeling like this is an odd situation that nobody's going to know about.
Right.
Make it feel like I'm the only one.
Right.
Because,
and I mean, I don't know if we've talked about it. I think we talked about it in the earlier part about thinking about your business, but coaches, I mean, they're there for that stuff.
Absolutely.
This is stuff that a coach is going to be able to help somebody through. And, you know, and if you can't afford a coach, like I always encourage people, hey, take somebody out, who's doing what you want to do or something similar. Take them out to lunch.
right.
Like, it's just, Dan Miller got me started on it, and I will preach till the day I die about it because that's what I've been doing. I mean, I have probably, I don't know how many people I've taken out to lunch.
Right.
Because that's where I know I've gotten golden nuggets, and it's only cost me an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours the longest, and $30.
Right.
Like, it's hard to beat.
Right.
And so I know in my finances, I know lunches are going to be part of it.
Right.
So it just is what it is. And there's people out there that want to speak to that.
And don't be afraid to ask.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
For example, I have a relationship with a person who's retired. You know, their career has come and gone. They're investing into new hobbies and things like that. And my connection with this person is through music, technology and music. They've been leaning on me as how do I implement this technology stuff.
Right.
I play classic piano. How do I do all this new stuff?
Right.
You know. And one day we're sitting at lunch and I said, remind me what your career was in. Mm-hmm. And it turns out they worked for the Small Business Economic, I can't say it, the Development Center for Small Businesses in Indiana.
Oh, no way.
Decades of career in that. And I was like, oh my goodness, we got to talk. We sat at McAllister's for another hour and a half after that.
Talking about that?
Talking about that.
Right.
You know, and so you just don't know the gold, the wisdom.
And I bet that person was totally willing to share that with you.
Oh, like lit up.
Yeah. And it's like, so when you touch on somebody's passion like that, they are totally willing to help. I mean, when I went to go talk to those people, the group in the school, it was great talking with them, but surely out of the fact that I would love to see them take off. I want to see them grow their future. I want to see them excel. And
absolutely.
Even if one of them ends up being one of my competitors, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, which is kind of crazy to think about, but I mean, like you said, like this person, is retired now and is willing to share so much information like this. And I think that also goes along with the abundance scarcity mindset.
Right.
I think sometimes when we start a business, we often think they're not going to want to help me because I am going to be their competitor.
Right.
Or they're not going to want to help me because it's going to take time out of their day. But then there also could be the people out there that would love to share with you and would love to encourage you and would love to spend time with you because they want to see you excel.
Yeah.
And they might not even know you super well. Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Yeah. So stop saying no for other people.
Right. Go out, branch out.
Yeah.
Get out of your box. Mm-hmm. Take your time. So
I think that's good.
Yeah. I mean, this is, all these things go to mindset and behaviors, right? So mindset definitely affects your behaviors, which happens in your finances. And these kinds of things I would encourage people to lock on to, think about before they start a business. Because as soon as you have people reporting to you, you need to recognize your tendencies as much as possible. And nobody's going to know everything.
Right.
So that when you go into situations, you know how you might react so that you can take your time through it.
Yeah.
Because when you have a customer that's not happy with you and you have to sit there and listen to it, even though it wasn't your fault, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Because in their eyes, they hired you to do the job and you didn't do it to the way that they wanted it done. And that's all that matters.
Right.
So it's a whole nother facet when you start asking people for money to do a job. It's part of it. Mm-hmm. It just is. Yeah. So.
Oh, cool. Well,
I think we've hit on enough today.
I think we have. Let's wrap up. And you guys, thanks for sticking with us.
Yep.
Let us know how this is hitting home, if it is or if it's not. Give us a like, subscribe, comment, shoot us an email.
Please.
We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear more about your journey. And if you are looking for a coach, looking for a mentor, hit us up.
Reach us out. If
we don't know, we know people.
We do know people.
We know
people that are.
Chris is a connector. He knows people. Right?
Yeah, right. I'll connect you up with some good people
Absolutely.
if you need some help. So for sure.
We got resources. So,
and even if you don't have the time to devote to it, podcasts are a great thing. There's podcasts out there that will get you this information too.
Yeah,
so.
I've literally searched in Spotify the problem that I'm trying to solve.
Yeah,
and I'll find some off the wall people, and I might only listen to 1 or 2 episodes of their podcast, and there have been times I've listened and went, that was
right. It's pertinent, but maybe not pertinent.
Yeah, maybe not the best.
Yeah,
but it clarified my thinking. Still,
yeah,
it's worth it. So, you guys are great. Thanks for listening, tuning in.
See you next time.
Bye.